Now, as I suggested would happen last night, Canberra has had to step in and agree to fund lockdown bailouts for people in Melbourne. The bad decisions of the Victorian government, the unnecessary, damaging and heartless lockdown by the Daniel Andrews government is to be funded largely by the rest of the country. Now, that's a problem. I mean, the last thing anyone should do is encourage this sort of hysteria, this sort of incompetence, this sort of self-harm. But of course, Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg had to stump up, as I said last night, because Australians, Victorian Australians, are left without money, without a living for at least 2 weeks, thanks to their wrong-headed, lazy, incompetent and panicked government.
Will be paid for that sort of 7 days from this Friday forward over that 7-day period. And if things go beyond that, then a further payment would have to be initiated and that process done again in some form. But it is not our expectation that those restrictions would be in place beyond that next 7-day period.
Oh, I wouldn't count on that, ScoMo, especially now they know Canberra will pay. Victoria and the other indolent state governments might yet lock down again and again. Never mind that virtually all the vulnerable are now vaccinated in this country, so that even if a virus did run amok, the damage would be far less than it has been in the past, far less than it was last year, and far less than it's been anywhere overseas up until now. Never mind that we've got ample healthcare capacity and expertise to deal with any infections 18 months into the pandemic. Never mind that nearly everyone who gets infected in Australia, including now, doesn't get sick. Either no symptoms or mild symptoms. Yet the fear, the hysteria, the alarm continues over a virus that's not actually making people sick. They don't mention that very often, do they? One person in hospital at the moment, I think, in Victoria. No deaths among 25 million of us for more than 6 months. Yet in Victoria, they've got kids home from school again, ruining children's educations for no good reason, against all the medical advice we've built up over the past 18 months. This stuff is beyond belief. Have a listen to Victoria's acting Premier abrogate his own responsibilities.
This is not a choice. We don't choose to go into lockdown. You know, there is no choice. That's the advice from our public health team. So when we get advice from public health experts that you must go into lockdown and have a series of restrictions in order to run this to ground and ensure it doesn't escape and become uncontrollable, that is not a choice for government. It's not a choice for Victorians.
No one's in charge. That's what he's saying. No one is in charge. The medical teams tell him that if he wants to crush this virus, this ordinary coronavirus that they like to refer to as the beast, if he wants to eliminate that virus, he needs to lock down. But it's his job to think about the costs versus the benefits. It's his job to realise the vulnerable are actually vaccinated. It's his job to realise the suffering that is brought on by a lockdown. And it's his job to ensure that contact tracing, QR code systems and public information are up to scratch so you have other options other than lockdowns. It's his job to have learned from 18 months of mismanagement. But no, he locks down and he says it wasn't even his choice, not his decision. If an acting Premier is not making decisions, he's not acting like a Premier. And then listen to this from federal Labor as they desperately try to use the pain inflicted on Victorians and turn it into political points against the coalition government in Canberra.
And we're talking about a lockdown which comes as a consequence of the Prime Minister's failures on vaccines and quarantine.
Yeah, apparently if there was no virus, no infection of any person in this country through hotel quarantine at all, apparently if that were to occur and everyone was vaccinated, everyone in the entire country, then everything would be fine in Victoria. Seriously, these people want the whole population vaccinated and a virus completely eliminated, and then they think they'll be able to talk about calling off their beloved lockdowns. It's that insane. It's that delusional. The twisted partisan attacks of federal Labor are so illogical that they have to end up blaming Canberra for this horrible lockdown, while at the same time defending state Labor for imposing the same lockdown as a smart and sensible way to go.
medical authorities being conservative in the way in which they approach this and getting on top of this early is what we need to be doing. Look, we've learned a lot, obviously, in the last 12 months. But I think what we've seen, not only from the Victorian government, but jurisdictions around the country in terms of dealing with this, is to move fast, move early. And that's how we're getting on top of things.
Oh yes, it's such a clever little early lockdown, but the horrible pain is the fault of the federal government. Can't these people ever take a position on an issue based on the facts, based on reality? Or does every utterance, every thought have to be driven by partisan politics, even in a pandemic? Look, Labor is exposed by the facts in Victoria. Another 57,000 tests in the past 24 hours and just 3 new cases. And crucially, they again are all inside the ranks of close contacts, so not contained by the lockdown. This lockdown is exposed, like the last one, as unnecessary and ineffectual. All it's done is hurt people and convince them to get out of Victoria as soon as they get the chance. There is a beast running wild in Victoria, and it's not a virus. The beast that is ruining Victoria and running it into the ground is big, incompetent government. Overbearing, wrong-headed, interventionist government is one of the most destructive forces known to civilisation. And in Victoria, it needs to be brought to heel to save the state.